Welcome back. This is Rich again, back for an exclusive YouTube video blog. This YouTube video blog I'm going to be doing will be a top 10. I did a lot of top 10s years ago on my YouTube channel, which I shared on Facebook and Twitter. It was a regular feature, so I'm bringing it back periodically. But first, an important message. Like Crystal's Time Machine Facebook page, like Crystal's Time Machine group page, like Crystal's Time Machine game show fan page on Facebook. Follow her on Twitter at Crystal Amy John and Machine Crystal. Follow her on YouTube, Crystal Johnson, and listen to Crystal's Time Machine each and every Friday and Saturday night from 9 to 11 p.m. on WCAP 980, where everybody gets it. She plays hits from the 60s, 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, and 90s. Okay, now on to the video. This top 10 list will be about the top 10 classic game shows that need to be rebooted or revived in the near future. I am not going to include game shows that were remade and rebooted about 15 years ago that got canceled because they're they already had a reboot and a revival, and they probably don't need one right now. There was a lot of game shows, classic game shows I left off this list that could have been on here, but I didn't think right now it would be the time for them to be revived. But here are the top 10 classic game shows that need a revival, reboot sometime in the near future, and it probably could be on ABC, NBC, CBS, Fox, maybe syndication, a streaming service, or game show network. That number 10 is Tic-Tac-Toe. Tic-Tac-Toe was a question and answer game show, like playing tic-tac-toe 3 in a row, up, down, or diagonally. It ran first from 1956 through 1958 on NBC daytime and primetime, produced by Jack Berry and Dan Aykroyd, but was involved in game show scandals. But the most known revival was from 1978 through 1986 in syndication, and CBS hosted the first 7 seasons by Wink Martindale, and the last season Jim Caldwell. In this version, a U.S. naval officer, Tom McKee, appeared on the show 45 days in a row, winning over $300,000 in cash and prizes. And they had a 1990 revival with Patrick Wayne as host, who was the son of the late actor John Wayne, and he was famous for saying, "You win." But that tic-tac-toe only lasted 6 months. And Tic-Tac-Toe was actually tried to be rebooted a few years ago. NBC picked up a pilot. It was hosted by Tom Bergeron, but they gave it to a test audience for NBC executives, and they panned on the show. But I think if they had some retooling of it, it might be on NBC or another network. We'll wait and see. Number 9 is Singled Out, which was kind of a updated version of the dating game on MTV from 1995 through 1997, co-hosted by Chris Hardwick, and he had as a sidekick for the first year and a half Jenny McCarthy, and the last half year Carmen Electra. It was like 50 single men. It was one single woman or single man going through single 50 single women or 50 single ladies, and would ask questions about certain types of things that were pet peeves, and it would go whittle them out into a handful, and then they would narrow them down to only um, two of them, and then whoever won it got themselves a date. And this is something that should be revived on either like MTV or Paramount Plus, but they would probably have to have a new co-host, co-host and hostess because Chris Hardwick's busy with Wall, and Jenny McCarthy is, fighting autism. Like she's an autism awareness advocate, so she's like spreading the word about that. But maybe it will work out. Who knows? Also, number 8 is Debt, which ran from 1996 through 1998. Hosted on Lifetime Television, hosted by Wink Martindale. It was produced by um, Disney TV, and it was a show that 3 contestants will come on, and they would answer questions to lower their debt. And if they won the game, they would have their debt paid off in the bonus round, and they could, and if they had the question for the choice with Paul Coach and got it right, they would win the money that they paid off the debt back. And it sounded like a great game. And this game show was a show that had legs, that could have had a very, very successful, maybe 5 to 10 year run on Lifetime Television. But writers for Debt, after this first season, most of them wrote on another Disney game show called Once Ben Stein's Money, and it affected Debt's questions in the second season, and Disney test piloted, test ran a couple reruns of syndication of Debt on Lifetime to a few television stations to see if they had a market for a syndicated one, but eventually the ratings were not good. But I thought this show should come back and maybe be something for ABC Summer Fun and Games one of these years. It probably will, have to get a new host because Wink Martindale's close to 90 years old, and he's basically retired from hosting game shows. Also, number 7 on this list is the $64,000 question, which was a big hit in the 1950s, hosted by Hal Marsh on CBS. It lasted several years, but it was one of the game shows that were involved in this quiz show scandal. It was revived in 1976, hosted by Mike Darrow, but it was revived as the $128,000 question. And then it was also had a second season in 1977, hosted by Alex Trebek, which was filmed in Canada. 2000, there was a pilot developed for the $64,000 question, but it was $6,400,000 question, hosted by CBS Sports broadcaster Greg Gumbel, but it didn't sell. And if it ever comes back, it'd probably be a big money game show, maybe the $64 million question, but that's a little too much in my opinion. But you never know. Number 6 is Jackpot. Jackpot was a game show produced by Bob Stewart, that ran on NBC from 1974 through 1975, hosted by Jeff Edwards, revived in 1985 through 1988 in Canada and the USA Network, filmed in Canada, hosted by Mike Darrow, and 1989 through 1990 on syndication for Fox, many on Fox owned and operated affiliates. It was a riddle question and answer game show, and it was real fun with the building of a jackpot, and they actually had some of these elements on Hollywood Showdown, a GSN game show network original. And this jackpot could sound like a game show that might fit with GSN because Game Show Network, Game Show Network's been like reviving a lot of classic game shows. Also, number 5 on this list, Body Language, which was a Mark Goodson, Bill Todman production, lasting from June of 1984 through January of 1986, hosted by Tom Kennedy. It was a charade version of Password Plus, and it was actually a decent game show. And I think it should be revived, and it would look good on like NBC or ABC for summer fun and games. Number 4 on this list is the Canadian game show Definition, which had a 15-year run on CTV in Canada, hosted by Jim Perry, famous for Card Sharks and Sale of the Century in the United States. And it was basically a game of hangman / Wheel of Fortune with like determining like puns. And the show was known for giving away cheap prizes, but if it was revived, and it would probably be like a decent money winner game show. The game show Definition had at first a celebrity and contestant playing against each other. Then it was a team of 2 contestants playing against each other. Something that Game Show Network should consider having its own version of Definition. You could have a player versus player format for this Definition. It would be good. Number 3 on this list is Truth or Consequences. Truth or Consequences started on the radio, hosted by Ralph Edwards in 1941. Then it went to television in 1948, hosted by Jack Bailey, Ralph Edwards, and the most famous host Bob Barker, who's hosted from 1956 through 1975 on NBC in syndication, was revived in 1977 in syndication by Bob Hilton, 1987 with Larry Anderson, and actually one of his assistants was the unknown comic Murray Langston, and they had a 2004 revived version pilot hosted by Chris Rose, and this was silly stunts. After they had to answer a ridiculous question, and when the ridiculous question was answered, the person couldn't get the question right. The buzzer would go off within a second or two. And then they did some very funny and ridiculous stunts. The 2004 version didn't eliminate the question part. It just was the stunts. And with like the revival of with like Wipeout for stunts that aired on ABC 2000s and 2010s. I think Truth or Consequences could be one of those game shows on Summer Fun and Games. Also, number 2 is Hollywood Squares, which was 9 celebrities playing tic-tac-toe. It lasted from 1966 through 1981, with Peter Marshall as host, and the center square was Paul Lynde for most of that run. They also had Rosemary, Maury Amsterdam, Charlie Weaver, and George Gobel as regulars. It's been revived many times, including the ill-fated 1983 version, which was merged with the match game Hollywood Squares Hour on NBC. It was revived in 1986 with John Davison as host, with Jim J. Bullock and Joan Rivers as regulars, sharing the center square, rotating it. Plus, they had Cheryl Stevens as the announcer. Had a 3-year run in syndication, and it had like 5 years on. Then Hollywood Squares was revived in 1998 with Tom Bergeron as host and Whoopi Goldberg as the center square for 4 seasons. Had a 6-year run in syndication, mainly on CBS owned and operated stations. They had reruns of it on Game Show Network on and off from 1999 through 2009, and it hasn't been revived since, but this could be a prime time game show, maybe on CBS or NBC. I cannot see another syndicated version of Hollywood Squares again, but you never know. But they'll probably have to find a different host and maybe a couple of stand-up comedians as the center square or regulars. And number one on the game show that should have a reboot or revive sometime in the near future, What's My Line? One of the most famous panel game shows of all time, produced by Goodson Todman. The original run was 1950 through 1967 on CBS, moderated by John Charles Daly, and then they had Arlene Francis, Burnett Cerf, and Dorothy Kilgrain as regulars. Also, semi-regulars included Steve Allen among others. He would say, "Is that a bigger than a bread box?" So they had people with unusual occupations, and they had mystery guests. And after its CBS run ended, they had 7 seasons in syndication from 1968 through 1975. First with Wally Bruner as host, and Larry Biden for the last 3 years. And Arlene Francis was back on the panel from the syndicated revival. They had a lot of other pilots for potential What's My Line series, like 2000, 2001, 2002, with Harry Anderson hosting as moderator. It was going to be on CBS during the summer months, but they had the pilots. They showed it to a test audience of CBS executives. They didn't really like it, and they never went for a go. But with, like, to tell the truth, having a 7-year run for revivals, and then possibly I Got a Secret being revived with Katie Nolan as host. And why can't, like, What's My Line finally get revived and put on television again? But if it does, they'll probably have a well-known moderator, probably a rotating cast, and probably more of the unusual occupations. We'll have to do something that, like, adult themes, which I really don't like, but that's how they've been doing with a lot of the game shows recently, having adult themed content for the questions and answers or the occupations. And that's about it on that. And thank you for all your support. I'll be back soon.